Well, let's welcome in Representative Marlin Stutzman from the great state of Indiana. And Representative, before we get to your legislation, which I definitely want to talk about, I just want your response to that because isn't that insulting to Americans who absolutely think that, what isn't normal was the last 4 years of Biden's insanity?
Absolutely. Well, great to be with you this morning, Jenna. It's kind of funny because she's talking about us coming up on our 250th birthday as a country, and I've been talking about it a little differently because, we have a bloated government. We have a government that has grown out of control. There's no accountability. There's no one overseeing what our federal government is spending until now with the Trump administration and the Department of Government Efficiency, the DOGE team. And I've been saying that, we're coming up on 250 years. We need a colonoscopy for the federal government. So I would say she's got a very different perspective, that maybe the Democrat Party's throwing a fit because somebody found out how bad they were operating the federal government, that Americans are ticked off and that we're fed up with them taking advantage of the American taxpayer. So if she wants to compare it to teenagers, that's fine. But I tell you what, the American people are starting to see what's actually going on in Washington, D.C., and it's a revelation to all of us. I think we all instinctively knew that the federal government was being operated very poorly over the past several decades, and I think all the way back from the Obama administration, that's when it all started. They kept Trump on his heels with the impeachment stuff and the Russia dossier and all of those investigations, and never, the Trump administration did a lot of great work in the first term, but was still not able to get in and find now what we're finding. And the DOGE team, I think, is doing a tremendous service to the American people. So that's why they're throwing a fit.
Yeah, so well said, and I could not agree more. I think it's that the Democrats know that they're being had, and not only the Democrats, but some of the Republicans in D.C. who have just kind of gone along with it, and we've been calling them
Yep.
Republicans in name only. And so, what's your view on the continuing resolution and this kind of controversy with Representative Thomas Massey being the lone Republican? For I think a principled reason, but I tend to, as I talked
Yes.
about in the first segment, agree with the Freedom Caucus and the overall Republican position. Okay, this is 6 months, and we're doing a lot of good things like keeping ICE, being able to protect the border. Some of these things that we need to do. But overall, I mean, you've introduced legislation to restore checks and balances in the federal government. I think that's what America wants to see instead of some of these like 6 month, 1 year kicking the can down the road. We want to actually see some action on balancing the budget and stopping the wasteful spending.
Yeah, sometimes we just don't always understand the way God works in our lives, and I would say that applies here with the election and the fact that President Trump lost the 2020 election. In hindsight, I think they would have just continued the same sort of chaotic movement and the treatment of President Trump if he would have won the 2020 election. Of course, we were all disappointed at the time, but now, 4 years, the Democrats had a chance to reveal who they really are. I mean, watching them on the House floor during the joint address when President Trump spoke to the nation last week shows who the Democrat Party has become. And they won't even applaud a 13-year-old African-American boy who's fighting cancer. I mean, just the fact that they behave like that should show all of us how they really, who they truly are. And so this CR is what I call it. We're cleaning up. I'm a business guy. I'm an entrepreneur. I bought companies that are struggling and needed to be turned around. And you come in and you see all the bad bills that the previous management had, and it's like, why do we have to pay these bills? But it's like, if you want to move forward, you got to just clear the deck. And this is even better than that because there's no new spending. And so we're just clearing the deck, getting rid of the old stuff. Because the Democrats never pass a budget. They like to pass these omnibuses that are just big Christmas trees with all their ridiculous spending in them. And so under these circumstances, and like you said, I mean, Thomas Massey is one of my best friends, and I just think that we've got to clear it all off, and we have already passed a budget reconciliation bill for next year's budget that would start October 1st. And so we got to clean this out so we can focus on going forward. And so it's not the best circumstances. There's a lot of us that, we don't like CRs, but under these circumstances, we got to help President Trump, that he can have the funds for the border, have the funds for the military. It actually freezes spending. So there's a lot of good arguments to say, hey, passing the CR as it is, and moving forward will be good for us to get our work set up for us going forward to start turning things around. But also back to DOGE, they are doing such a great service for Congress because now, we appropriate, we authorize funds, but it's the bureaucracy that actually does the spending on programs, and then we're now finding out how they define a particular program. And so DOGE is doing a great service to America, so we can budget better and truly cut spending.
Absolutely, and that's really what the American people want to see. And I hope that with the CR, with the 6 month kind of time frame, that it won't just be then that Congress says, well, we need another 6 months or we need another year, but actually
Yeah.
use that time to get some things done. And so let's talk about your legislation that you've introduced, HR 1226, the Restoring Checks and Balances Act, which is a great thing just in terms of the title, but requiring and removing power from federal bureaucrats and return it actually to Congress, who should be the only ones who are legislating. And so, how overall would this act restore checks and balances, and perhaps, hopefully, have Congress actually control the purse strings and some of these other issues that really should be determined by Congress?
Yeah, no, this is a bill that even President Trump talked about a little bit in his joint address, and the concept of sunsetting regulations. His comment was for every new regulation, 10 need to be removed. And so what mine would actually do would be just sunset every regulation that the executive branch administers or passes, that it would sunset after 5 years, and then it would have to be reauthorized. And so the American Action Forum, they just did a study on the regulatory cost on the economy and on the country from the Biden administration, and their estimated total cost to the country in regulations is $1.8 trillion. And so, we often think of taxes and fees, and it's like, what's the cost to the American people? Well, I'm a business guy, and so I work in a regulated industry, in the food industry. I really enjoyed listening to your previous guest talking about the MAHA movement, and we're in poultry and in beef production and agriculture there in Indiana. So I love the direction that RFK wants to take our policy related to healthier foods. I mean, it's so critical for us to not only be eating healthier, but it's going to help our healthcare issues. But these regulations are a huge wet blanket on the economy. And so I know that, we can't grow faster. We could grow stronger and healthier as a company, but we have all these regulations that are holding us back. And it's not always even just the regulations, Jenna. Sometimes it's just the bureaucrats who just don't do anything, and they don't give you an answer. I mean, for example, we were trying to do just a simple label for a beef stick product that we produce, and it was like 9 to 12 months just to get good answers for us to be able to put a label on and to be able to sell it to our customers. And so I didn't disagree with the regulation even. I just disagreed that we couldn't get an answer from a bureaucrat in Washington that just held stuff up and sometimes didn't even know what the answer was, and they make it up as they go. So that's why the Checks and Balances Act that I've authored is to sunset every regulation after 5 years, and then it just comes back up for review. And if it's a good regulation, then it can be reinstituted. So that way we don't have this pile of regulations that continue to overlap. And, this agency has this regulation that touches, a particular small business. And then you got another agency that's got another regulation that's affecting the same small business. And it's just becoming too much for the American people. And that's why what Trump is doing and where we're going at in Congress is to get the government off of people's back. And this is one way the Checks and Balances Act would do that.
It's amazing. I'm talking to Representative Marlin Stutzman from the great state of Indiana, and this is the Restoring Checks and Balances Act at H.R. 1226 that was introduced. And I think overall, Congressman, that's exactly what the American people want in the Trump mandate, is to reduce the federal government overall. And it's kind of hard, I think, to get the federal government to say, hey, yeah, we're too big and let's reduce our own size down. But that's exactly what we want from conservative members of Congress. And so Trump has also talked about the federal income tax and reducing or even eliminating that altogether. Ultimately, that would need to go through Congress. And what's your view on reducing something like the income tax, which I think would overnight reduce just the availability of cash flow to Congress to be able to overspend?
Yeah. Well, there's a lot of talk about tariffs, and I support the president's efforts in using the tariffs as a tool. I mean, it's incredible to see how effectively he has used tariffs to negotiate to get Canada and Mexico to start supporting us at the borders and stop the drug trafficking and the human trafficking and the sex trafficking that's we all know is going on at the border. And they're, paying people to come to the United States to effectively push America as a country politically into the arms of the Democrat Party. That's what the Democrats think that's happening. They're going to bring in all these illegals that will eventually vote, and they'll vote for them so that way they can control the country for years and years to come. And the American people are seeing right through it, and they're like, no, and that's why President Trump has this strong mandate. But that's where President Trump is using these tariffs to protect America and say, look, we're not going to just let people keep taking advantage of us. And it's happening on currency manipulation. China is really good at that. Our family's also in the manufacturing space, and we see that, whether it's on steel products that we buy or raw products that we use to manufacture our goods and products, aluminum, brass, other metals. We are competing with China, and they beat us every time. Now, there's some spaces that we have a competitive advantage when it gets to transportation, but China, Turkey, and other nations around the world have these advantages. And so we're actually seeing companies in Indiana seeing a spike in orders because of these tariffs, because companies are saying, hey, we're going to come to the United States and manufacture products. In fact, Honda even announced that they're going to bring the Honda Civic manufacturing from Mexico back to the United States. And in Indiana, we have a huge Honda plant that they're going to be manufacturing the Honda Civic there because they want to avoid the tariffs. But I think also if it's a leveling the playing field. If you're going to tariff us, if Mexico's got a tariff on us, if China has a tariff on America, we need to say, well, then we're going to have a reciprocal tariff. And then if you want to be $1, we're going to be $1. If you want to be $10, we're going to be $10. And eventually, I think what's going to happen is everybody's going to start lowering their tariffs down, and the markets are going to stabilize, and it's going to be better for America. And we don't need, all of this. The federal government spends almost $6.5 trillion a year, and there's so much waste. We know it, and we're learning it through the Doge team. And there's no way that the federal or that the American taxpayer needs to fund a federal government that is so bloated and wasteful. And we clean that up, and the American people want to work. The unemployment rates are low. There's work to be done, but at the same time, we're working harder for less, and that's what President Trump wants to fix and make America a country where you work, you get a reward, and you can support your family, spend time with your family, and do the things that you want to do and really fulfill the American dream that we all have.
And pursue happiness, perhaps, and actually exercise our freedoms and liberties. Well, Representative Marlin Stutzman, really appreciate your comments this morning. It's great having you on the show. Looking forward to having you again soon. And listeners can follow him at Rep. Stutzman on X. He's from the great state of Indiana. And all of these things, if we just focus on what's good for America, really, these aren't, Republican versus Democrat partisan things. I wish that everybody in Congress, regardless of party, would recognize that these are our founding principles. These are our founding ideals, and this is what and why and how we should be able to exercise our God-given pre-political rights as the founders intended. So we'll be right back with more here on Jenna Ellis in the Morning.